have been discussing the Middle English poetry, and in the previous lecture, we talked about Geoffrey Chaucer, his life, early life, and his public services, and also his major works that brought huge change in the English literature as well as the history of poetry. And then we also discussed that Chaucer was a figure that is now and has always been, people recognized him for his best work, that is the Canterbury Tales. And we are moving towards our core topic, that is our, the topic that we will always be looking. And a lot of important questions. Well, we have to encounter a lot of, important questions about this Canterbury Tales work of his life that is very important in the English literature. And we also discussed in the previous lecture about the Chaucer's essays that was also important, and then later life, and then at the end, Chaucer's end of life, that how he died and where he was buried. So these were the things we discussed in the previous lecture, and today is our very important lecture, that is number two, lecture number two of the MA English previous paper 3, and the name of the book is Poetry 1. I would recommend you, and I've always been recommending you, that please watch the entire lectures and go to my channel, subscribe it, and then go to playlist and watch those lectures so that you may understand the upcoming lectures and the entire story. Today's topic is about the prologue to the Canterbury Tales, the most important work, which is also that has also played an important role in the history of English literature, in the poetry, and as will be the core topic of the exam. And I would say the first part of the exam will, a lot of things will cover this topic. So let's discuss this topic, and I hope you will understand it. Let's read the first paragraph and then make it easy. The prologue to the Canterbury Tales, the general prologue is the first part of the Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. Okay, let's first know the meaning of prologue. What does it mean? And actually, the the word prologue means introduction, or the introductory part of a play or novel or any story that has an introductory part. And what happens in the introduction, that actually introduction to characters have been given to the of the entire story in the first part of the play or story or whatever the thing is. So prologue means introductory part. Here the general prologue is the first part of the Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. It's a big book, the Canterbury Tales, a lot of story in this poem. And the prologue is actually the beginning part of those stories. It actually offer the introduction about the upcoming stories of the Canterbury Tale that was written by Geoffrey Chaucer. The most popular part of the Canterbury Tale is the general prologue, which means the first part is very important of this poem. Why? Which has long been admired for the lively, individualized portraits it offers, because it has the introduction part which tell us about the upcoming stories, because there are a lot of individualized stories, portrait stories about the different kind of people that we are going to read. The frame story of the poem is of a religious pilgrimage. Actually, there was a group of people, and they were moving for some religious work to a place. Uh, Chaucer is in the Tabard in Southward. Actually, Chaucer was present there in this area in Tabard, where he meets a group of sundry folk who are all on the way to Canterbury. Sundry folk is an old word used in English for various people. Sundry folk mean various folk or various people. So Chaucer was, present there, and he met a group of people. They belong from different, departments, I would say, or from different passions, or from different occupation, I would say. and they all were together, going for religious work, pilgrimage, just like the Muslims go for offering pilgrimage, So those people were going, moving for that purpose. The site of the shrine of Saint Thomas Becket, and actually the shrine is a place where this religious work is offered. It's a holy place, and Saint Thomas Becket is the name of that place. So these people were moving toward that area. Chaucer just included himself in this trip, and then what happened next is it is the general prologue that serves to establish firmly the framework for the entire story collection. The general prologue sets up this story, people going on a trip and telling tales. Actually, they just decided that we will go on the way when we are moving. We will have to discuss stories. And so each character of this group, they decided, they just make this plan that each one of us will tell the story on our way to this holy place, and then on the return another story. The title general prologue is a sorry, where were we? Establish firmly the framework for the entire story collection. Okay, here is the pilgrimage that risked being turned into a tale-telling competition. The title, General Prologue, is a modern invention, although a few manuscripts call it prologue. The name General Prologue wasn't used originally. Some old books call it prologue. The actual name, it was prologue, but it wasn't used originally. It was just prologue. There are very few major textual differences between the various manuscripts. The old copies of the book are mostly the same. We say it just like I told you that the original name was just prologue, but there are a lot of manuscripts that say it about this. Okay, structure of the general prologue. Structure of the general prologue. The structure, let me highlight it first. The structure of the general prologue is a simple one. After an elaborate introduction in lines 134, 1 to, sorry, it's a mistake, 1 to 34, sorry. It's 1 to 34, yes. In the first 34 lines, actually what happens that there is an introduction to the characters, and then the narrator begins the series of portraits from 35 lines to 719 lines. It's the narrator where he begins the series of portraits that these kind of stories will happen. These are followed by a report of host suggestion of a tale-telling contest and its acceptance. Line 720 to 821. The host, the innkeeper, who suggests a storytelling contest, everyone agrees. They are sitting in the inn. Inn is a place where a travelers comes and they stay, eat, drink, and then they take their way further. So he decided to the host actually decided that there will be a competition, and each one of us will tell these stories. So they all agree. It's 800 720 to 821 up to here. On the following morning, the pilgrim assemble, and it is decided that the knight shall tell the first tale. From 822 and onward, they just decided, the knight actually started this first story. The knight was actually the first character. There were various characters, as I told you in the beginning, that this poem is all about the characters. Various characters, they meet together, and everyone will now tell their story. So here is a big message, and the message is an information, and also a message is that actually Chaucer is expressing and telling us that what was happening at the time when Chaucer was present at that era in the Middle Ages. So he actually take each person, each individual, each character from various departments, and now they will telling the story. So when we will, going to understand that those writing, those poem, we will encounter and we will experience, we will see what actually was happening at the time of Chaucer, in the Middle Ages, that is from 1343 to 1400. So we will see those things in this poem, and that is the reason people always liked Chaucer, because he was real. He preferred things that were going in the real world, and then he decided to write those things in the form of poetry. Sitting. Now let's discuss this part. It's an important one. The sitting is April, and the prologue starts by singing the praises of that month, whose rains and warm western winds restore life and fertility to the earth and its inhabitants. Okay, the first part, as I told you, that it was introductory part, and the sitting, actually by sitting here we mean that where the entire story, the place, the background where this entire story happens is actually described in the first part of this poem. For example, if we go to the original poem, the first line of this poem is in the Old English, that is the original one. It's like uh, the words start like this in the Old English: one that April with a shower saute. So this is the first line of that poem, and it actually describes us you know the April month. The start praises April's rain and wind that make things grow. So it was the first part that was related to the nature, and it is because Chaucer wanted the attraction, the interest, and the consideration of the reader, that he actually build up a connection with the rest of the poem by starting things uh, praising actually the nature. So the first sitting is all about the April month, and by April here we mean the beauty of the nature, because in the month of April, everything looks beautiful. And the start is actually praising the April rain and its winds and its greenery and meadows and those things. When we start this poem originally, what actually was written at that time, then you will enjoy it and then you will understand also. But it's just the introduction that we are going to, I'm trying to give you about that thing, and the book is trying to give you about those introduction. The actual poem, inshallah, will start in the upper in our next lecture, the actual writing of that poem. Okay, let's continue. There's plenty of life, the Chaucer says, prompt people to go on pilgrimage. In England, the goal of such pilgrimage is the shrine of Thomas Becket. He falls in with a group of pilgrims, and the largest part of the prologue is taken up by a description of them. Because of this, people go on trips pilgrimage to visit Thomas Becket's place in England. Chaucer joins pilgrims and mostly describe them in the prologue. In the various, I would say, in various steps, in various stories, uh, he actually framing the time in which he was living. Let's move next. Our next topic is the pilgrims, the the characters that were actually the part of this story. The pilgrims consist of a knight, his son Esquire, the knight's Yaman, a prioress accompanied by a second nun and the nun's priest. A friar, a merchant, a clerk, a sergeant of law, a franklin, a haberdasher, a carpenter, a weaver, a dyer, a tapestry weaver, a cook, a shipman, a doctor of physics, a wife of Bath, a parson, his brother, a plowman, a miller, a municipal, a reeve, a summoner, a partner, the host, a man called Harry Bailey, and a portrait of Chaucer himself. At the end of this section, the host proposes the storytelling contest. Each pilgrim tells two stories on the way to Canterbury and two on the way back. Whoever tells the best story is to be given a free meal a night. Actually, the pilgrims is by pilgrims here mean, of course, we have the characters of the story, and I told all of the name of those characters. We will discuss each character in the original writing of this poem, inshallah, in our upcoming lecture. The first, that was discussed in these character was Squire and a Yeoman. Squire and Yeoman. Let's discuss this topic, and then we will see also further characters that included in this story, and then we will move towards the original writing of this poem. There we will understand. There we will understand all the things in a very clean way, inshallah. Here is let me. It's actually these three are one. Yes, now it's correct. Okay, the first three characters that has been introduced in this poem is knight, squire, and a yeoman. Of all of the figures in the Canterbury Tales, the knight is the most obvious of struggling figure, according to the general prologue. Let me highlight this so that you may see it better. He warned many times for the Christian faith, fought in numerous battles against pagans, and stands as the height of a worthy and virtuous holy warrior. Actually, the knight was a person in old areas in those times that was, a brave soldier who was fighting for the country, especially for the queen and princes at that time. So it was all about the introduction of this knight, and then a squire was also a man who was guarding the, those things, the, uh, about the princes and those about the king, the time of the king, and also about the people. So squire knight, those were those kind of men belonging to soldiers, like I would say. And yeoman was actually a man who was looking after the farm, or those kind of things. So what actually happens next is they fought in the various numerous battles against pagans. Pagans were a kind of people who belong to other religion, and stands as the height of a worthy and virtuous holy warrior, a man who is also always devoted and always loyal to the king, princes, and all the things that going around there. His travels are remarkably vast. They visit a lot of areas. He has fought in Prussia, Lithuania, Russia, Spain, North Africa, and Turkey against pagans. Actually, this kind of knight is, in the story, in the actual poem that we are going to discuss further. When we start the original writing, you will also know about this in very detail. Most these are the places where he fought for his country, and Mos and Saracen killing many. The variety of lords for whom he has fought suggest that he is some kind of mercenary, but it seems that Chaucer may have known people at the uh, English court with similar records. The variety of lords for whom he has fought suggests that he is some kind of mercenary. It means that he fought for lots of different leaders, so maybe he was like a hired soldier. Chaucer might have known people like him at the king's court. As I told you before, that Chaucer was actually framing the time at which in which he was living to the people of that era, and also to the people of next era that are coming to also like us. He was showing that what actually was happening at that time. His son, the squire, who was a squire, actually the knight's son was also a squire, his name was Landner, is by contrast an elegant young man about court with fashionable clothes and romantic skills of singing, and dancing. The yeoman is a skilled servant in charge of the knight's land. His dress is described in detail, but not his character. So it was all about his son, that he loved singing and dancing. It was a kind of person and good at thing like those, and like a posh guy, I would say. And this knight has another person who was living with him, and he was a yeoman, and he was a skilled servant looking after the knight's land. We know what he wears, but not much about his personality. It was all about today's lecture, and inshallah, we will record our upcoming lecture about the other characters. And after describing each character, then we will move towards the actual writing, the original writing of this poem that is in that time of English that was written by Chaucer, and we will explain that English into now. English that are spoken all over the world, so that you may understand better in easy English that old English that is quite difficult and also complicated. So we'll make things easy for you. Hope you have enjoyed today's lesson, and we'll meet in the next lecture with some new topics. Please watch this, subscribe it, and if you have any question, write it in the comment below. Thank you.